Hi. I thought it would be interesting to do a series of videos talking about classic record stores that I have visited in the past. Now, I've mentioned before that I've been collecting vinyl, I've been collecting music for most of my life. And I certainly started collecting cassettes when I was about 11, 12 years old. And then eventually that grew into compact discs. And certainly as I grew into my 20s, I became more and more interested in vinyl. And I'm still quite a big collector of used vinyl. And over the years, I've visited so many different secondhand vinyl shops. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many I've actually been to. I've traveled a lot in my life, and any time I would travel, especially when I was in my 20s and into my 30s, one of the very first things I would seek anytime I went to a new city was the local secondhand vinyl stores. That was always the first thing on my list. And for a time, I would actually judge a lot of cities by the quality of the secondhand vinyl that I would find in that city. Now, I've been to record stores all over Canada, all over the United States, and even into Europe. And it's really amazing when I think back. Of course, a lot of these record shops were okay or good or fine. Many of them didn't leave a huge impression on me, but there were a few that really did. Certain classic record shops that I was lucky enough to visit that really, really left an impression on me. And in this new series, I'm going to be talking about these various record shops. Now, one of the first ones I can think of that really left an impression on me was the old Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street in Toronto. Now, for any of you who have ever visited Toronto, if you live in Toronto, if you're from Toronto, especially if you're in my age group, certainly if you're in your 40s, early 50s, and you've been to Toronto, especially if you were there sometime in the 80s or the 90s, that's exactly when I was there. When I was 21, I was a university student in Toronto. This was back in 1993. And I was a student at Ryerson Polytechnic University. And what was great about Ryerson was the location, especially for someone like me, being a kid from a small town on the east coast of Canada. I suddenly found myself being a student in the dead center of one of the most exciting cities in Canada and probably in North America. And it was great because Yonge Street was this thriving hub of businesses and shops and restaurants, and I was right there in the thick of it. Quite literally, the old Sam the Record Man was a stone's throw from my university. And I used to love going there. I would go there on breaks between classes. I would go there during lunch breaks and look at all the wonderful selection of records. Again, I came from a very small town, and in my small town we had very small record shops with modest selections, and all of a sudden here I am in Sam the Record Man, and there's 2 floors just full of records and CDs and tapes, and it was just amazing and incredible and such a great experience. From the moment I stepped through the front doors, it was just so incredible. So as I mentioned, there were 2 floors in Sam the Record Man, and basically on the ground level floor, it was more sort of the hits of the day, the current releases, pop music, a lot of pop, a lot of rock, a lot of the best-selling material, a lot of the back catalog stuff. So if, say, for example, you just discovered one of your favorite bands and you just bought their latest album and you loved it, so you want to pick up all their previous releases. So that's exactly where you would go. You would go to the ground floor and you would find this really impressive back catalog of releases. And chances are, unless it was something super, super obscure and super hard to track down, there was a very good chance that they would have it there at Sam the Record Man. And I remember the walls. The walls were covered with autographs. Any artist, any band, any singer who traveled through Toronto, it was a prerequisite. They had to sign their name on the walls. And I just remember looking up and seeing all these amazing signatures just plastered all over the wall. And again, as a wide-eyed kid from a small town, that was really, really impressive. And it just really left an impression on me. Now, as I recall, upstairs, there was the second floor. And from what I recall, again, this was over 30 years ago, but I remember up on the second floor, it was more jazz, classical. I think there was a lot of like DJ, like 12-inch club mixes and 12-inch dance records up on the second floor, from what I recall. If you lived in Toronto, if you were someone who lived there for quite some time and was quite familiar with Sam the Record Man, you can certainly correct me on that. But that's what I remember. I remember the second floor being more like jazz, classical, sort of dance music. And those are my big memories of Sam the Record Man. I bought a lot of really cool releases there. The prices were good. The selection was great. I remember the staff being fairly helpful. And again, it was just a fun place to be. I would go there. Most times when I went there, I didn't buy anything. I was quite a broke student. I didn't have a lot of money, but I would go there just for something to do. Just being there and looking through all the racks of CDs and cassettes and albums, that in itself was a ball to me. And just spending hours and hours looking through all the different discs, I found that so fascinating. Being such a music geek and such an avid music collector, it was just always a great experience to go to that Sam the Record Man. And also, one more thing I will mention. I actually had a friend of mine who also lived in Toronto at a different time. We didn't know each other while we were living in Toronto, but he shared a story with me. He lived in Toronto back in 1981, and he told me that he was in Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street, and his first language was German. And he noticed one day he was walking through Sam the Record Man, and he overheard these male voices speaking in German, and it immediately caught his attention. He turned his head and looked, and shopping in Sam the Record Man were the four guys from Kraftwerk, the classic lineup of Kraftwerk. Ralph Hutter, Florian Schneider, Karl Bartos, and Wolfgang Flür. And there they were shopping in Sam the Record Man. My friend told me he approached them and he asked them in German, "You guys, you're Kraftwerk, right?" And they looked at him and said, "Yes, we are." And this would have been during the time of the Computer World tour. So they were in Toronto at that time. And basically, my friend told me he grabbed a Kraftwerk album off the racks and got all of them to sign it. A really awesome story. Anyway, I'm sure there are tons of stories like that surrounding Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street in Toronto. So that's my first look at a classic record shop that I feel very fortunate to have visited in the past. It's no longer there, unfortunately, but those iconic spinning neon records, certainly if you look at a lot of photos of Toronto from those days gone by, that's such an iconic image of those spinning neon big records out in front of the store. So thank you for watching. Hope you can join me again next time. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, and please, as always, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.